Today on No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer.
Please realize that people have heard of God, but they don't know God, and they don't understand about his grace. And they don't understand how he can be so kind to them. And people wrestle with sin. They wrestle with heartache. They wrestle with all of this stuff. And you and I are the distributors of God's grace. That's why it's so important that we have a testimony so that when we speak into the life of others, that they would take us seriously and not just look us by like Lot's son-in-laws did with him. They just looked him over, man. Oh, come on, your life is trash too. Who are you to tell us all this stuff?
Through innocent blood, he showed his love, taking the cross for us. No greater love than innocent blood.
Welcome to No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer. Ever wondered how the past shapes our future? As we look at the lives of Abraham and Sarah, we see how God's past actions impact everyday people like you and me. Their story teaches us that our impossibilities are God's opportunities. But let's contrast their lives with the consequences of a compromised witness in Lot's life. God was so merciful to both of these Old Testament examples. Even after great steps of faith, these characters still struggled to trust God, which impacted how they lived their life. Recognizing God's presence in our Christian walk helps us face our weaknesses without excusing sin. Let's join Pastor Jeff as he teaches us in Genesis 18 through 20.
Taking the cross.
And God was asking, wait a minute, why did she laugh? Sarah denied it. Well, why did she deny it? Because she was afraid. Why did Adam and Eve hide in the garden? Because they heard the sound of God walking in the cool of the day. They know that they had sinned, and what was wrong? They were afraid, and they hid themselves. Why do you step back from God when you blow it so bad, or you blow it on a daily basis, or something that you do say or don't do or say? And it's like immediately Satan brings in that condemnation to try to separate you from God. And God doesn't want that. God is crying out, and he's saying, Jeff, where are you? Jeff, where are you? And in this case, he's asking a question to Abraham about Sarah, but Sarah denied. She's laughing at the promise of God. And she denied it. Why? Because she was afraid. She was doing something that is so human, things that we do within our humanity. And tonight, I want to encourage you to get over that. Tonight, I want to prop you up and build you up in the Word of God, that you might take God at His word. And that is that throne of grace is there, that we have access to His throne of grace to come when we need help at those most inopportune times, that God is there waiting, ready, willing, arms open wide, and He's bidding you to come. Come to receive that grace that we need, the mercy that we need, right there at the right time. And so the chapter ends. He closes this thing out. We get down to verse number 23. We got a little bit of a transition that is happening here and going on. Let me read it to you, picking up in verse 23. It says that Abraham came near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? So the scene with him receiving the promise and entertaining the angels and what do they call that? A Christophany, a theophany, the appearance of Christ in the Old Testament. So that scene has passed. Now we're moving on to a different thing. And Abram is there, and he is interceding on behalf of Lot. And now in verse number 23, again, he's interceding. He's talking to God. God, are you going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? And he starts this process in verse number 24. He starts out by saying, God, okay, if there's 50 righteous people down there in Sodom, would you please just spare it? God says, sure. He goes to 45, he goes to 40, he goes to 35, he goes to 30. He's rattling his way all the way down in 20 and 10. Look at verse 32. It says, then he said, Lord, he says, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak but once more. Suppose 10 should be found there. And God says back to him, he says, listen, I won't destroy it for the sake of 10. And so the Lord went his way, and as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. And so this intercession of Abraham that is going on, that he's interceding for Lot because he knows that Lot is in a very, very, very bad spot. And I like this because it reminds me of something in the New Testament Take a look at the screen, just in part, James chapter 2, verse 13. It says this. It says, James is reminding, and he's saying, listen, he says that mercy triumphs over judgment. That God desires to give mercy. Why does he do that? You know, we learned back at the time when we were looking at Noah, before God destroyed the entire earth with a flood, that he invited Noah and his family to come in. And we learned a very important piece of just adding a little bit of information to what our eschatology, our end times events will turn out to be. And that is that in the character of God, he always loves to give that grace and that mercy before wrath is poured out. He loves to do that. Your life, my life, the life, as we have played out here in the Old Testament. And the New Testament satisfies that he desires to give mercy, because mercy triumphs over judgment. And Abraham, he started this intercession of saying, God, please, please. And he just works his way all the way down to 10 people. But would you believe that God's desire, it didn't even stop at 10 people? Because in what we're going to see here is that it drops all the way down, and actually 4 people are rescued. Lot, his wife, his 2 daughters are brought out. But at the end of the day, it would even move farther than that, because God was coming for one, and it was Lot. It was to get him out. 2 Peter chapter 2. I wrote this down in my notes, and I have to tell you right here in this immediate second, I have no idea what it is. But let's find out what it is together here. 2 Peter chapter 2, picking up in verse number 4. Here's what it says. It says, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but he cast them down to hell, and he delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. And he did not spare the ancient world, but he saved Noah, one of 8 people. We already saw that. A preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes. He condemned them to destruction, making them an example of those who afterward would live ungodly. Don't forget the stories of the past, because people are telling you right now in your current environment that they can live as they please and that there is going to be no retribution for that. It's a lie. And these are examples that are being played out. Verse number 7. He says he delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. You know, have you ever had that question in your mind? Well, you know, what was the deal with Lot? Was he in? Was he out? Was he saved? Was he not saved? You know, is he one of God's or not? Well, here's what the Bible says. Righteous Lot. God delivered righteous Lot. And that statement is there, which I feel like I live in, and that he was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them tormented his righteous soul from day to day. How? How was he tormented? By seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. That should be encouragement to us, that we should understand that from all the way to Genesis, all the way back here to 2 Peter, like, you know, at the end of the Bible and all this stuff, that God sees, that God knows. That there's enough grace in the work of God. There's enough mercy in the hands of God for us as we're walking through this. Folks, you are being changed by the things that you are experiencing on a daily basis within your country that is fading fast. And while it's just our country, we're just another story of a people group, if you will, over the history of the ages that comes on the scene and falls off the scene. That's all we are. But our lives are contained within that. You were born here, you'll die there. You're responsible for the dash in between. How you live in it? Please realize that God knows the struggles that we're up against right here. Verse number 9. It says, the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptation and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk according to the flesh in the lust of uncleanness and despise authority. They are presumptuous, they're self-willed, and they're not afraid to speak evil of dignitaries. That totally describes our time and things that are happening. Yes, it has described other days that have passed by. That's true. 2,000 years ago when Peter was penning that, it described his time as well, right? Because the Roman Empire and Nero and all of these things, all of the way that they used to treat Christians was very bad, and their morality of what they did, kind of anything goes, you know. And we're right back at that, but we're a different people group. We're in a different age, but the ramifications of sin are still present before us. And that's the takeaway, that we would understand these things. And maybe we could even go farther, again, just to underscore that fact that while Abraham is trying to negotiate with 50 and 45 and 40 and 30 and 20, maybe we would go so far as to remember what Jesus said. For in John 3 and 16, again, a memory verse for many of you, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever, there it is, down to one, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. The intent of God is not to be this, this mighty power in the sky, if you will, that is just looking to just blast us and crush us like, red fire ants or something. That's God. God's not doing that. God desires that we would accept the lifeline, the gift that he's given to us. God desires that when we accept that lifeline, the gift of grace found only in Jesus Christ, when we accept that we would not abuse the grace that we've been given, but we would take that saved soul and that we would pour it out for the glory of God and the benefit of those that are around us. So don't be like Lot. Lot, again, is a saved man, but he had a wasted, stinking life. Now we transition into chapter 19. And how does this go? Well, this is a real mess. Again, he's got a saved soul, but a wasted life. And how so? Well, because he lost his witness to family and friends. In chapter 19, scroll ahead to verse number 14. Let's take a look at this, and we'll see how it goes here. But at verse number 14, it says, Lot was given this instruction. He says the angels came in, and again, he housed them. He took them out of the open square. The men in that city came to beat down his door. Hey, turn these two guys out. We want those guys. We want to have sex with those guys and all this stuff. And Lot's out there begging him, no, don't do this. They're here because of this craziness that's going on. And Lot goes, I've got 2 virgin daughters. Why don't you just, you guys, you look like dirty, filthy beasts. Take my 2 virgin daughters. I mean, that's literally what happens in this story. It's terrible. But at the end of all of that, please understand that Lot lost his witness because when the angels told him, they said, get out of this place because we can't destroy it until you're out of here. Get out of here. And look at this. Verse 14. So Lot went out and he spoke to his sons-in-laws who had married his daughters and said, get up and get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. Watch. But to his sons-in-laws, he seemed to be joking. Completely lost his witness. Yeah. When push came to shove, Lot spoke those things that the angels told him to do. Hey, get your family out of here, man. Get them out. But because his witness was so watered down, it wasn't there no more. They just looked at him and said, oh, Lot, good old buddy, and they just completely bypassed him. Look ahead, verse number 16. It says this. So the next morning came, all right, they said, hey, get out of here, take your wife, your 2 daughters, and all of this stuff, lest you're consumed in this punishment. In verse number 16, it says, and while he lingered, the men took hold of his hands, these are the angels, and the hand of his wife, and the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out, and they set him outside the city. And so God was merciful to that family, even though that they were lingering, even though they continued to be in this spot where they were just dragging their feet. And we could read this story and think there's no relevance to us in church in 2023. And that is just not having a good understanding of application of Scripture. In a very simple application, we can ask the question, and we can ask and answer it for ourselves personally, of course. Is that where am I lingering where God is trying to get me to move? Am I dabbling around in this particular sin? Where is the Holy Spirit convicting me that I'm not responding? What is God up to and is showing right before me? And he's desiring for me to get moving, but maybe I'm like Lot and I'm just lingering because I've become so settled within sin. Again, Lot has a saved soul but a wasted life. His testimony had been diluted. And I don't know if you've never been to that space of wrestling in your faith. I could tell you stories about my faith walk that, hey, it may shake you and go, why is this guy on the stage? Well, because God has called me up here. But I'll tell you, 2, 3 years, maybe 4 years into being a Christian, I was a country guy from the feet, the boots, all the way up, straight up. Once in a while with a hat, mostly a trucker's hat is what I wear. But that was me. That's how I grew up. I grew up in a particular spot in San Diego, California, on the east side, Lakeside, El Cajon, Alpine, all of these particular rural areas there, if you will. And I would love to drink me a good beer. I just grew up that way. But now I'm a Christian, and I'm staying away from these things, and I have a witness. But I tell you, I got around a group of guys, and man, I worked with them, and then that witness kind of deteriorated. And next thing you know, one Friday night on the way home, oh, come on, Kramer, come and kick it with us real fast. And I end up showing up over there. I'm in a country western bar here, hanging out with these guys. I was there for 20 minutes, but I was in there, and I had enough impact on these people's lives that they're saying in the bar, this is that Christian guy. Hey, you want a beer, man? And at that point, when they passed me a beer, I go, oh no, I have lost my witness here because I think I'm just in with the club now. And I could not get out of that place fast enough. But man, that is a skid mark. That is a scar upon my heart that I remember to this day. And it's a great place to teach it right here, right? Because Lot he's screwed up. He's lingering in this. Now look ahead to verse 26 here, 19 and 26. Take a look at this. It goes on down. Hurry up, get out of here, escape. Okay, then the Lord rained down brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 24, verse 25, he overthrew those cities all in the plain and the inhabited cities and all of this stuff. But verse 26 is key. But his wife looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Now, we read that in the English, and we kind of just don't get this, okay? But in the literal Hebrew of this, my understanding of this is it's like she's at this place where she turns, she looks back, but watch, don't miss it, okay? She turns, she looks back, but she starts going back. There's a difference there. It's not like, oh, wow, an amazement. That's not it. That wasn't it. There was a longing within her heart as though she lost everything. And she wanted to get back to that. And she turned into a pillar of salt right there. There's no indication that she was a saved individual, okay? Lot, yes, not her, right? And what was in her heart was not so good. And she wanted to go back, and she died. Verse 27, it says, and Abraham, he went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And then he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and towards all the land of the plain, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land, which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God, what did he do? He remembered Abraham, and he sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the city in which Lot had dwelt. Do you remember what Abraham was doing? Before we got into all of this, Abraham was in that place where he's interceding for the life of Lot. He's interceding for the righteous within that city right here. And God remembered. And once and again, may you remember this, that God desires to give grace and mercy before wrath. But the warning goes out. It has gone out to all of mankind. And there is nobody in the entirety of our world at this very second or from the previous seconds of days gone by that has not seen the testimony of creation. And if they would respond to that testimony of creation, they'll respond to the other light, and God will make sure that other light is given. All of that to say is to understand that our time in 2023, in the country that we live in the city that we live in, please realize that people have heard of God, but they don't know God, and they don't understand about his grace. And they don't understand how he can be so kind to them. And people wrestle with sin. They wrestle with heartache. They wrestle with all of this stuff. And you and I are the distributors of God's grace. That's why it's so important that we have a testimony so that when we speak into the life of others, that they would take us seriously and not just look us by like Lot's son-in-laws did with him. They just looked him over, man. Oh, come on, your life is trash too. Who are you to tell us all this stuff? Now, you may get that story, depending upon how far you've gone in grace, if you will. When I first got saved, I took the dude that led me to the Lord, that pointed me to the Lord, I should say, that was taking me to church, that gave me a Bible on that. I took him. We went after all my beer drinking buddies. Let's go. Come on. I was that pumped up, like from the beginning. God saved me. I took that gun out of my mouth. I went to church that weekend, and literally it played out like that. But in the successive weeks and months, and all that stuff, I immediately went back to all my beer drinking buddies and said, you have to see this. You have to hear about Jesus. Tell him, Kevin. I looked at my friend, tell him. Well, I don't know anything, you tell him. I literally did that. And I would crash the parties. And they got to the point where they locked the door, shut the lights off. Oh no, who's here? But it was just like that, man. I found life. God saved me from taking my own life, and I was that passionate to share it with my friends because I knew their dark stories. And they knew mine too, right? They saw mine. I was a wreck. All right, I don't know if I read verse 27. Maybe I did. I think I already read it. What can we take away from that? Abraham stood before the Lord. I think there's a cool benefit within our relationship with God too, is that we get a chance to stand before God. That we don't have to go through some priests. We're not like in this Old Testament scope here, especially when Moses comes on the scene. Where these different sacrifices are going on, and we have to do all of this stuff. We don't have to do that. I mean, we can run right into the throne room of God. We don't have to go to a pastor at a church, right? We can come directly ourselves to God. And man, while that is a tremendous benefit of grace, you have to realize that all these folks, hundreds, thousands of years back here, as we move into the Old Testament picture, that they long to do and to have exactly what you and I quite often take for granted. Don't forget what you have. And chapter 19 ends here now. It ends with a continued tragic nature of sin. Maybe that's the easiest way I can put it. It's compromise. Because these gals that, Lot's daughters, he only had 2 of them, but they made it out of the city. Mom died because she went back. But they made it out of the city. So Lot and his 2 daughters. And if you'll see what they did here, verse 31, 32, it says, now the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man on the earth to come into us as the custom of all the earth. Is that true? No. When you read the narrative here of everything that we've gone on, there was other cities that were around there. But Lot didn't want to go into them because he was afraid that they were going to kill him. And his daughters had this internal, weird, strange morality twist that happened. And so verse 32, daughters are conniving with each other, and they say, come, and let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that he may preserve the lineage that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So Lot's compromised life moved into such a way that the effects of sin warped his daughters to move into this place to where they're looking to have sex with their dad. I mean, this is what's happening right here. I mean, they were so twisted in that nature. That is the effects of sins, that it takes what is right and pure and good in the eyes of God, and it twists it. It just turns it in such a way, and that's what happened here. And so it ends this way. Maybe we could again just recall that back in this same chapter 19, verse number 8, again, these gals were his 2 virgin daughters that were going to get thrown to a crowd of sexually hungry men, and Lot was just kicking them out there. The text later goes on to say the sons-in-laws and the ones that were married, I think there was that betrothal aspect that was in place there, not necessarily a man and a woman living within the house because he only has 2 daughters. So make that adjustment there as you're reading the scriptures, kind of understand the flow of that, right? I don't know if you caught that when we were reading through it. Again, the sons-in-laws, the daughters, that were married, it says to them, it's like a betrothal, if you will. So they hadn't gone into that place of actually consummating a marriage, okay? What does the Bible tell you and me? The Bible tells us in Romans 12:2, not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. That's why we stay in God's word, so that we think the way that God thinks. And when you're away from God, you make it up as you go. And when you make it up as you go, because you're farther away from God, there's a darkness that is there, and the twistedness that comes out of you, it overshadows. So this immorality springs forward here. It's not good.
That's all for today. Join us for our next broadcast of No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer, weekdays at 10:30 a.m. No Greater Love is an outreach ministry of Westminster Calvary and is supported by listeners like you. If you would like to partner with us, please text any dollar amount to 84321. We would like to personally invite you to join us for our weekly worship services Sundays at 8 or 10 a.m. and Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. We're located in Westminster, Colorado, on the northeast corner of Church Ranch and Wadsworth Parkway, near the Vasa Fitness. If you're not local, tune into the weekly live stream on our web campus, app, Roku, or on Apple TV. Have you downloaded the free Westminster Calvary app yet? You can stay up to date on coming events, join a small group, request prayer, and watch live worship services. Just search Westminster Calvary on your favorite app store today. Lastly, we're a church that's ready to serve you. If we can do so, give us a call at 303-223-4640. And remember, there's no greater love than when Jesus gave up his life for you and me. Thanks and God bless.